What is up? Cool, interesting call I just got off of, and it's maybe something that I'll chat more about in the future as well. I have a buddy who's in the perpetual travel space. Kind of, it's about being a nomad and that kind of thing. He asked me to come in and help some of his clients with buying businesses. And one of the first people that came from that is a guy who's in the process of retiring to the Philippines. So one of the first countries that I visited in Asia was the Philippines. I feel like that may have been, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago or so, and got to spend time with the Empire Flipper guys. Anybody who's part of this community has probably looked at a deal from Empire Flippers. That was back in the day when all this stuff was fairly new. It may even been more like 12 years ago or so. But I was buying internet businesses from them. At that point, they were the AdSense flippers. So I visited Philippines, spent some time in Manila. Really loved the country and the city, and popped down to Cebu for a little bit. So it was cool to talk to this guy. One of the things that was awesome is this client, Phil, who's retiring, is 42 years old. Not a older guy. And this is where I do think it's hard to compete with internet businesses. So I talk a little bit about the pros and cons in an earlier video, just between online and offline. And one of the things that I am a big believer in is that if you're starting from scratch, you don't have a lot of cash. Offline can be the place to go because you're going to get so much more leverage, and then you can pay this business off and eventually sell it. And the cool thing is, this is what Phil did. He had a business and he sold it. It wasn't a very big deal. I won't say exact amounts, but we're not talking $1 million. We're talking just a pretty normal size small business. And so he exited that, and so now he wanted to take some of that capital and put it into an internet business. So in that situation, it's really valuable to be able to buy that internet business, because now you have that location freedom, which was his main goal. And the other neat part to this, and this is one of those things that it's interesting if you know anything about the fire movement, which is all about retiring early, but it's all about, like, let me save as much money as possible and work as hard as possible, and not spend money for a lot of years and then have a lump sum. And I think it's really a combination of both. We're living in a world now where people can think globally. So that's the first thing. You don't have to stay in America. You can go to another country where your money's going to go further, and now you don't need as much money to retire on. If you go to a place that costs half as much as the U.S., instead of needing the 2 million, now you only need a million. So that's the first thing, and it's cool to see people that have mapped out a plan where it's like, man, I only need 300,000, and I can retire and live the way that I want to live. The thing that is the unknown is everybody has different kind of expectations for how they want to live, what activities they want to be able to do, what kind of food they want to eat, if they want a maid or not a maid. You have to put together what your budget looks like. But then, based on the lifestyle that you want, you can look all over the world and pick, whatever the top three places, spend time in those, and decide which one matches not only your financial goals or limited financial resources for retirement, but also is the lifestyle that you want to live for that amount of money. So it was a very cool process to walk through with him, of getting this deal done. Very simple, not a complicated business. Obviously, he's looking to retire, so that's something that you should keep in mind. We closed the deal a couple weeks ago. It's like a $750,000 business, but it's got 16 employees that are part time. It's got a lot of moving parts. We had a call on it last night, and it's work. But at the same time, we closed whatever, $300,000-$400,000 deal that's super passive and doesn't take hardly any work at all. And so you want to understand what kind of deal matches what your goals are for whatever time in your life you're at right now. So we wanted to close a deal that was a very simple thing to run, didn't take a bunch of work. But I figured I would just talk because, we're talking a little bit about just the Philippines in general and pros and cons and all of that. So I thought that would be cool because it's one of the places that, if I didn't have to talk on the phone, I enjoy Asia, but I enjoy probably for me South America and Europe a little bit more. But I think it's a great place, especially for first-time travelers to visit and check out. It's my favorite place probably in Asia. I enjoy Bangkok, I enjoy Saigon. But what are the pros to Manila? Well, number one is the fact that it's they speak English and it's pretty Americanized, especially in certain areas. There's this place called Global City where it's like American restaurants. There's like TGI Fridays. You feel like you're in the US, but then you can still get out of that bubble and get into the Philippines and, feel like, okay, I am in another country and experience the culture and all of that. For some folks, it's nice to have that refuge, especially when you're on the other side of the planet, just to be able to see some recognizable things and even if you're not going to eat there, see the Kentucky Fried Chicken and all that. But I think English is a big part. There's like well-spoken English. You'll find people in Thailand, you'll find people in Vietnam, and a lot of people will speak a little bit of English, but it's very broken. It's tough to understand. And so that can just be tough to get around and find the things that you want and experience those. I also think that Manila is a great home base. So one of the things that he and I were talking about is flights are just ridiculously cheap. And so it's not like, oh, like I'm in the Philippines now and now I'm stuck. And this is another thing to think about as far as you start to consider what are the types of places I would like to retire to. Once I get my income to a level that I'm paying my bills and I've got some savings, where do I want to live? And it's good to plan that early. I think that's one of the things that he did that was smart so that he could take that time and spend a month in a city that he thinks may be a good fit, map out what his life would look like, and really decide is this the right thing for me. But eventually deciding on Manila for him, one of the things was the fact that he did have some other cities that he really enjoyed, and he wants to be able to travel to those. And so, Manila has a great airport. It's really cheap to fly in and out, and now you have all of Asia at your beck and call. But you've got this home base that you can kind of call home. That's an easy place to live. The other thing is obviously it's inexpensive. This is something that I think is important to consider in just a side conversation that we had, which is the decision if you're going to buy a place in that country. I just invested in a hotel in South America. And it's just a different ball game. Everything that you think you know about real estate or business or investing or banking and all of that. I mean, you really want to start from scratch and not make any assumptions about how this new country works. But the thing about buying a piece of real estate, while it can be dangerous and you want to make sure that all of the paperwork is what it's supposed to be, find attorneys that you can really trust. The other part of this is long term, if you're renting a place, you run the risk of those prices increasing and eventually pricing you out of the market where you decided to live. That's a huge thing. It's a kind of I feel like just that risk is even greater when you're in a country that you're not familiar with. You've made this your home, and then you slowly get priced out of it. You could be starting from scratch with your whole life. It's not just like, oh, I'm in this part of town in the city I grew up in, and now I got to move to a different part of town. So that's a big thing to consider. But it's one of those things that if you did buy that becomes a benefit. You buy and the prices go up. Now you've got this asset that's worth more. So that is the one case. Like, I'm actually not a fan of buying houses. I've done a video on that before. The math literally does not make sense. Millennials are realizing that and not buying those houses, which decreases the fact that that there's going to be that demand, which decreases the benefits to buying a house as well. So it's kind of this spiraling down of, it doesn't make sense to buy a house, so fewer younger people are buying houses from older people, which means that those houses are going to be worth less, which means that you probably shouldn't buy a house. The one case where it does make sense is when you've got $1 million. Let's say you're in a country where you can get a great house for 100,000, 200,000. That could make a lot of sense. And now it's just an insurance that you've paid against the idea that that rent is going to go up over time. The other thing about the Philippines that was interesting is there's this this visa that you can get where a residency, really, where it's SRRV, where if you're older than 35 years old, you can put some money in a bank. Let the money sit there. It does have to be like a Filipino bank. Can't be like an American bank that's in the Philippines. You pay a application fee, it's like $1,500, and it's pretty easy to get residency there. And then you can essentially stay, travel, do whatever, and you're a resident. You do have to put about $20,000 into a bank account, which, if you're retiring to a place, you want some money in a bank account anyway, so that can be cash. In a lot of other countries, they want you to spend the money. So you've got to put the money into some business, or you've got to put it into real estate in order to have a qualification for an extended visa or residency. So that's a neat thing with the Philippines. So interesting conversation. Really cool to see somebody retiring early, 42 years old, buying a business. The business is going to pay for all the bills, plus put money in the bank. And I think that's where you want to be when you retire. You don't want to be in a situation where you're just have enough income to pay your bills. You need to be paying all the bills plus adding to the money in the bank. That should really be the goal. I think the idea, especially as, who we all want to live as long as possible. So the idea that you've got a set amount of money and you're like, okay, I'm gonna live on 50,000 a year. I got $1 million, and so that gives me 20 years. What a nightmare way to live! I basically said I've got to die in 20 years, or that's it. So we want to do the opposite. We want to have that cash there that's really just for emergencies, and then every month we're adding on to that in addition to the paying all our bills and all that. So hopefully this is helpful. Hopefully you guys, as we're talking about doing deals, talking about making money, we're talking about all this, you're thinking about the long game of what does retirement look like for me? So tell me down in the comments below. Curious, what are you guys thinking about? What do you want retirement to look like for you? Be sure to subscribe, love the comments. I'll do a live, maybe even later today, where I will just go through to spend time on comments. So we'll talk to some of you guys hopefully on that. Thanks so much.